Welcome to the Event Debrief, the podcast where event professionals come together to unpack what really makes events work. Each episode breaks down expert-led debriefs, emerging tech, and industry insights to help you deliver more effortless events. So, let's jump in.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Event Debrief. I'm the host today, Alex, and another very exciting session, something that we've been speaking internally about here for a while. We've recently surveyed, I think, 380 plus event planners from around the world, and by far the number one metric that seems to be growing year on year is attendee experience and event engagement. And I thought probably no one else better than our guest today to go through it. So our guest is a professional MC. He's got over 600 events under his belt. He knows exactly what does and doesn't lose an audience. So as fittingly, the topic of today's presentation is called How to Lose an Event in 5 Ways. Bit of a play on words from that famous movie, but we'll get into it. I might throw it straight across to our guest, Luke. Luke, thanks for coming on, mate. I'd love to, maybe for those who don't know you, maybe a bit of background to yourself, your experience in events, and I guess, maybe dive into those 600 events you've worked on.
Absolutely, Alex. G'day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And wow, how to lose an event in 5 ways. And we might flip that today and say how not to lose an event and talk about things you can do and techniques you can implement to make sure you keep the energy and keep the engagement going. By way of background, just to get back to your question, full-time professional conference and event MC, over 600 events. Interestingly, before I became an MC, I spent 22 years in banking and finance. In credit risk, actually, and risk analytics. So it's actually a really weird background for a professional MC. Most MCs, hosts come from a theatre, come from an acting background or TV or radio. My background is banking, which kind of allows me to bring a different angle to the event, more thought-provoking insights, and intriguing discussions. Got an MBA from the University of Technology of Sydney. But hosting events is the magic. It's my ikigai, right? You know, that Japanese concept of what does the world need? What are you good at? What do you love doing? And what can you get paid for? And for me, that's hosting events.
So good. So good. Fantastic. I was going to say I might just kick it off straight away and we'll jump straight into it because I'm keen to pick your brain on this. Been thinking about it for a while. I guess when we set the scene, when we say to lose an audience, or to your better way of putting it, how to keep an audience engaged. But when we say lose an audience, we want to detract from. Can you define what we mean by lose an audience? So what does losing an audience look like at an event?
This is an interesting one. And for me, it's almost like credit risk. There's leading indicators and then there's lagging indicators. A leading indicator is something you see before the thing goes wrong. In credit risk, that could be a deterioration in the quality of your applications, which is probably going to mean lagging indicator. People are not going to pay in 6 months' time. You're going to lose money. In events, it's kind of the same. A leading indicator, how to lose an audience, what it looks like, boring speakers, and we spoke about this before we came on air, a technical person coming up there running through 1,500 slides in half an hour, not engaging at all. What does it look like in reality? The phones have come out. There's no energy in the room. There's no buzz. The speaker throws for Q&A and you hear crickets. We throw to a break or morning tea and the audience generally just shuffles out. Quite often when there's a really good speaker or the audience is energized, if there's a break in proceedings, the ambiance of the room will just explode because everyone's talking to each other. They're so excited to share their key takeaways. When an audience is gone, the room is just flat. There's none of that talking. The phones are out. The energy's low. You can see people yawning. There's not much eye contact and they shuffle on out with relative quietness and not much energy. Now that's what you can see in real time. The lagging indicator, what happens later on, is when you try and sell that event next year, next quarter, it's harder to get bums on seats. You might have CPDs, professional development points, for the reason that people are going to attend, which means they're kind of coming there just to tick a box as opposed to engage with your content. And if your audience is there to tick a box and not engage with your content, they're not going to be engaged. So it's really important to pay attention for our producers in the room to the energy in the room. And that could be as simple as walking up the side of the room and having a look at the room from the front, changing your perspective as opposed to sitting in the booth at the back. And I know there's a ton of things you've got to work on, but if you get up and have a look around, you'll see if everyone's on their phone. You'll see if there's plenty of fastidious note-taking active listening, nodding. The audience is making great eye contact. So pay attention for those non-verbal cues, the eye contact, the note-taking, the active listening, to see whether your audience is engaged. And then when they're out for a break, maybe go for a walk around through the crowd when they're having their canapes or when they're having lunch, and just pay attention to some of the conversations. If you can sense that energy during breaks and that reflection and that heavy conversation, then there's a strong chance your speaker and your event itself was engaging. In lieu of that, if the conversation's boring, if everyone's just on their phones, there's probably a real risk that it wasn't engaging and the engagement levels were really, really low. Let me pause there, Alex, and we'll see where else we can go with this one.
Yes, it's great. I was just taking a few notes. I think looking at, phones open per person sounds like a good metric to look at. How many people look at their phone as they're talking? Trying to engage with the audience, seeing if they're sort of tuning out as well. I think those lead indicators are really important. We did a podcast recently, and they said that now that content is so readily available, so you've got unlimited, you've now got AI, you can find anything about anything now. So a huge reason people go to events, as you said, is for the engagement, is for the experience. And it's not enough that you've got a good speaker with a good topic to talk about. It's got to have that level of engagement as well. So no, that's
spot on.
That's great.
Just let me jump in there on that. You struck on something really interesting, right? And this comes to our event profs when they're planning their event. Content is preponderant. It's fast and free-flowing. It's everywhere. One of the major reasons people come to events is to connect, is to build that human connection. And so what can you do when you're scheduling your event to make sure there's a real element of connection in there? And of course, there's the duration of breaks and how breaks are set up. That's a major part of an event where people connect, or a networking event before, during, or after. But what can you do to encourage speakers to create a workshop element to their keynote? So instead of speaking at their audience, and these are two very important words, at their audience, speaker speaking at the audience for 40 minutes, maybe they break that up and have the audience speaking with each other and then with the speaker for a portion of that. So we're not speaking at our audiences, we're speaking with them. And the differentiation between at and with, that's the magic. So I'd invite our audience to think about what you can change when you're planning your event and when you're briefing your speakers to make it more interactive, to give our audience more of that human connection, which they truly yearn.
Absolutely. That's great. And I think, and I'm lucky enough, we had this conversation a little while ago, and you had some really great experience. So again, across 600 different events, you've seen the good, bad, and the ugly from it all. So I think you mentioned those 5 ways in particular that I think are really bite-sized pieces for everyone listening to really take home. I'd love for you if you could walk through those 5 that you've seen in your experience and that you think can hopefully either make or break the event experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the 5 at a high level, cohesion amongst the team. That's the first one. The second one is the 1% changes that you can make to your event. The third one is CEOs, senior leaders, sponsors on stage. They love the limelight, or they've paid to be there, but how can you make it better? The fourth one is what happens outside the plenary. And then the fifth one is about using professionals and the value that they can add. So why don't we step through those one by one, and we'll start with teamwork and cohesion. Now, having good cohesion within your team, and what do I mean by team? You've got your conference producers, your AV, your photographer, your lighting person, depending on the size of the event, your MC, your speakers, the venue. Think about all the important people on the day that you need to meet with and connect with, whether it's getting everyone together to have a quick 5-minute huddle, meeting them, and creating a WhatsApp group. That's a big one. So that when something does go wrong, and I use the term when, because I think every event prof knows that the magic we do as an MC, my run sheet for a 2-day event is about 100 pages long. 85 to 90% of the work I'll do for an event happens before the event. On the day, as you all know, is just dealing with issues, right? So when things inadvertently go wrong, you know who to turn to. You're not meeting your neighbor for the first time when the house is on fire because you've spoken about this in the huddle. You might have identified some pockets of risk. So if things do go wrong, you've got a cohesive team that knows each other. And the most important thing about this is when things go wrong, there'll be no panic, and your team won't be playing the CYB game, the cover your butt game. They won't be trying to say it wasn't my fault. What they'll be trying to do is fix the issue. I love it that your podcast is called the Event Debrief, and we'll talk about debriefing later on, because the magic of a debrief is to work out why things happened and how to stop it from happening again. But when things go wrong in the moment, all hands on deck need to be a cohesive unit to sort out how we're going to fix this. And that's where that huddling, teamwork and connection really adds value. So that's probably the first one, a cohesive team. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
No, it's great. Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I think in any sort of aspect, right, in an organization or event, I think that the team culture and the cohesiveness, and as the blame game is, or I used to work on sites where it was not my business, was the other one. If something goes wrong and people ignore it. So I think I love the little practical takeaways, and I think we've had feedback of legitimate things people can use. So I think that WhatsApp group is a fantastic point. And I think to you, right, if people don't know each other as well, like that huddle before or the day before or the bump in at some point, getting to know everyone, introducing everyone to everyone. So if something, when it does go wrong, as you said, you've got someone you can reach out to, or you can call on Sam, because Sam's running lighting side. So I think it's a great first place to start.
Yeah. And knowing the names, Sam on lighting. Hey, Sam, can we just adjust that lighting? As opposed to, oh my God, the lighting's not good. What do I do? Who's in charge of lighting? Sam doesn't want to speak up because he or she doesn't want to get put out there, versus, hey, Sam, can we have a look at that lighting? I think there's a gap on stage. Now, you spoke about communication. There's a big one for me as we pivot to the 1%ers. The first and non-negotiable for me at every event is for me to have a line of communication with my PCO, a WhatsApp group that we can speak on. And why is that important? Because things happen. Speakers are late, speakers go over. There's a sound issue, there's a lighting issue, and I need to be able to ping them either from stage or from the audience saying, hey, listen, I can hear this really loud air conditioning sound. That's one of the 1%ers, we'll talk about that. Can we do something about that? Hey, these doors are really loud when clients are coming in and out. What can we do about that? And so the first of the 1%ers I'd invite you all to think about is, what's your line of connection with your MC? And a full-time professional, competent conference MC will be able to manage hearing from you whilst interviewing someone on stage, either through an earpiece or on WhatsApp. That's not a problem for me. And it's something I pride myself in the ability to do, to connect with my speaker, to bring out those key insights, but also know that my next speaker's 5 minutes late. So I'm going to drag this out a little bit and extend the session. I'm going to pad so that we can change microphones, so that we can sort out that late speaker, so that we can fix this problem. Because as your MC, I'm your eyes, ears, and voice on stage. So whatever you need me to do to make your life easier, I can do that. But if we don't have a line of communication, you can't tell me what you need me to do. So let's have that. The second, so that's the first one. Have a line of communication with your MC and be able to have that dialogue. And if they're not at the level where that's able to happen, that might not be the right event for them, and they've got more development to do. We're all on a journey, we're all learning. We're all learning. So that's the first one. The second thing, the second 1%er, and I've broken these up into internal and external. There's a few of them, so strap yourself in. And I've got a bit of a one-pager. Maybe we can send it out or post it online afterwards. The second is if this, then thinking. Now, I'm a risk manager by trade. Obviously, I host events now, but in a previous life, risk management. As risk managers, we think, if this happens, then I will do this. And so I'd invite you as a PCO to think about, what are the key risks you're facing? How do you know what's a key risk? You draw a graph with 2 axes, right? On this one, you write impact. On this one, you write likelihood. And then you write all the things that can go wrong. Now, the impact, if it goes wrong, let's say, for example, the power goes out. The likelihood that's going to happen in theory should be quite low, unless maybe the energy company's outside working. Then you've got a bit of a medium likelihood. The impact, if that happens, is actually quite high. Because if the room goes black, all of a sudden the AV drops out, you have 1,000 people sitting there in the dark. That's quite a high impact. So understanding what your risks are and graphing them, and knowing that the further they get towards the right-hand side, high likelihood, high impact, the more mitigating steps you as a producer need to take to make sure that if it does happen, you're covered. Now, you can't think of everything, but if you've got that mindset and you've cognitively thought about these things before you go live, if it does happen, it's less stress. It's less stress. Now, I touched on timing before. This is an external factor. Pay attention to timing. Wear a digital watch that's easy to read. Because I know your phone's got time on it, right? But as a producer, if you pick up your phone and all of a sudden there's a notification on there, the phone is stealing your attention. I mean, that's what they're designed for. But if you've got a watch, you can casually glance down and see what the time is. And knowing what the time is all day Time buys you awareness, awareness buys you time, and time buys you options. So if you're aware of the time and you know you're going over, you have options. But if you're not aware of the time and you've gone over time, your options are extremely limited, and now you're in panic mode. Too much Q&A is another 1% you can fix. People are worried about too much Q&A. This is why I love Slido. You can take a download of your Slido questions, get the speakers to answer them afterwards, then create a thought-provoking insights piece to send to your audience after the event. This creates an additional audience touch point. It's super engaging, and you're bringing value to events. We spoke, Alex, before we came on air. You know, what's my goals? I had Chris Doe on stage last week in an event, and he asked me on stage, he goes, there's a triad of things, and one of them is, what's your mission in life? What are you trying to do? For me, I'm trying to rid the world of boring conferences. And that's not about jumping on stage with heaps of energy all the time, but it's about making sure that we present things in a thought-provoking and insightful manner, because our audience have invested their time, effort, energy, and in a lot of cases, money to be with us. So let's give them a plethora of value so they come back and our event becomes a sustainable success. Debrief, the event debrief. We spoke about this briefly. Make sure you debrief. Make sure you debrief. Set time in your calendar to get everyone together. What worked? What went well? What can we be better at? And when you're asking people for feedback, Brian Hartzer, when I was at Westpac, would ask questions this way. Don't say, do you have any feedback for me? Say this instead. What have I done? Or what did we do? What have I done? What did we do or not do that you feel we could have done better? What did we do or not do that you feel we could have done better? And that separates the action from the person. So they're going to say, when this happened, when you did that, this was the impact. As opposed to, I think you're bad, it's the behavior, it's not the person. So they're the factors that I call internal. They're things you can control. You know, the accountability is with us. Let me pause and take your thoughts, and then we'll pivot on to external factors, because there's a ton of external 1%ers as well. I know there's so many things to think about, and we're trying to distill this into a bite-sized list for our audience, but let me get your thoughts, and then we might jump onto external factors, things like stages and stuff.
No, it's good. I think it's great. I think definitely the 1% is the debrief before and after. I think looking at, to me, the difference between success and not success in an event is the proactiveness. As I said, like if things are wrapping up, it's going too long. If someone's or even on a good topic, the next speaker's running late, being able to get that together as well. I think debrief and looking at the accountability one, I think it goes back to that culture too. You know, if it's like, you know, you did this wrong, we did this wrong, or the lighting was terrible, it's going to met with defensiveness, and they're not going to go through that. So I think to your point, what could we do better? And of course, if you ask the question, you know, do you have any feedback? It's always no. You know, even if they do, they don't feel like
you were great.
You were great. It was fine. It was great. Yeah. Or the way you were fine is always the worst one, because you know that's not true.
That's fine. What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible.
That happened to me once, where I hosted a huge event full of industry professionals, and at that point in time, it was the best I'd ever been. Now, we're always on a growth journey, and it's okay to be confident that you're good at something. I'm confident I'm amazing on stage, but I'm always getting better. And the feedback I got from everyone was outrageously good. You're amazing, the best MC we've ever seen. That was amazing. You kept the audience, you engaged us, you brought us on a journey. The CEO of the association said, yeah, we've spoken to the team and they consensus that you did a good job. And it's like, good. Okay, but I don't aim for good, like I aim for extraordinary. And the feedback I had was extraordinary. And so there's an interesting lesson in there for our audience. Choose your words carefully. Now, my love language, anyone that's read the 5 love languages, my love language is words of affirmation. So it's really important for me to hear, good, bad, or indifferent, what I've done. And if I put in an extraordinary effort, just say that was amazing. Perfect. What have you seen me do or not do that I can do better? Let's grow. Let's talk quickly about external factors. You spoke about stage and lighting. One of the biggest things I see on smaller events, again, I'm fortunate enough to host events like CPA Congress and COBA. These are big events. The AV team there is probably about a dozen people. So it's a huge event. You don't tend to see these pockets of risk emerge when you've got such a experienced, comprehensive and broad spectrum of professionals behind the scenes. But if you've got 1 or 2 people in the AV booth, and I do a lot of events like that, it's important for us as producers to make sure the 1%ers are good. And here's a bit of a checklist. Stage. Is the lighting good? I mean, are there stage lights? And if there are, how are they set? Because the amount of events I've been to where I jump on stage in my pre-event checklist and I can see on stage, I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm not being blinded by that light. Something's wrong here. I'm in a dark spot. And if you don't fix that, what's going to happen is your keynote speakers are going to go from really well lit. They're going to walk across the stage in a really engaging manner, but then they're going to be in the dark. And your audience, that's going to affect them, and it's going to put downward pressure on the engagement and on the energy, which is kind of what we're speaking about, right? So the first 1%er is look on stage, make sure that you've got lighting covered. Also pay attention to what the ambient lighting in the room is like. There's some fabulous venues in Sydney that face west. So the audience is facing west. When you're on stage, you're facing east. The sun sets in the west. So in the morning, it's not a problem. But by the time your event gets in the afternoon, if they don't lower the curtains, the audience can't see because they've got the sun in their face. So pay attention to things like that. A few more things on stage. Temporary stages have gaps in them. I've had a speaker's high heel fall through the gap in that stage and she fell over on stage. Make sure that, yeah, true story. Make sure they're gaffer taped. Make sure there's enough chairs. Make sure there's water on stage. Simple things like that. Simple things like that. I'll keep going and then we'll pause. So that's the first thing, the stage, the lighting, gaps, chairs, water. The second thing I see, the lectern is front and center. And then there's a panel right behind it. You have 1,000 people in the audience. If you put your lectern in the middle, most people can't see it. So ask yourself, what are the sessions I've got where a speaker needs a lectern? The MC, I like to have my notes on the lectern. I get out from behind it and speak in a rather engaging manner, but I can go without. If you've got MC opening into 5 panels, let's get rid of the lectern. Or if you've got MC opening into keynote, into panels, let's have a chat to our AV team because we've met them in our pre-brief and ask them, can we get rid of that lectern after this session? Me as your MC, I can give the audience thought-provoking recaps, content, promote our sponsors to give you time to get that off stage, and it gives everyone a better experience. Because how's your audience supposed to have a good experience if they can't see your speakers because there's a massive lectern in the way? And there are some venues, I won't name them, but the big ones, the lecterns are massive. Massive. Like Gub's 6 foot tall. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The last one on this, and then we'll pivot, is noise. What's the ambient noise in the room? Can you hear the doors slam? Is the air conditioning loud? I was at a gig in Melbourne, one particular venue there, had these little tin covers on the aircon. And so when the aircon was running, you could hear this ding, 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 ding all day. Now, for many audience members, that's not going to be distracting, but for some, it may very well be. And it makes it difficult for them to get your key messages through. They're going to tap out and they're going to leave. So think about noise. So there's some of the external factors that you should think about. Again, the internal is things you can control. Let's talk about things that I can do. What am I doing with my team and so on and so forth. Timing, PCOMC communication. The external stuff, what's the stage like? What's the lighting like? We'll keep going in a minute. Let me throw it back to you because next I think we've got sponsors on stage. So we've spoken about the first one. The second is the 1%ers. The first, looking at my notes, cohesion. So teamwork, 1%ers. Next up, we've got senior leaders and sponsors on stage. This one's an awkward one, but it's true.
It is, yeah, 100%. I think I think the 1%ers too. There was I think it was Conan O'Brien, or he speaks about it being the host, and he talks that the reason why a lot of these Tonight Show people have a secondary host is because if the guest is not engaging, like he said, his job is not about the guest, not to do with the guest, it's to do with the audience. And if he loses the audience, he uses that second person to sort of bounce around. And he says that if the little things happen, if they swear or if they do something that breaks, he said it can break the narrative. And instead of them being focused on what's happening on stage and being really engaged, if they sort of snap back to reality, realize they're in the living room watching TV, and they sort of tune out and they go somewhere else. So I think you mentioned a little while ago someone shoveling ice. I think you may have mentioned at one of the conferences behind the stage. Was that you? I think that was.
Yeah. There was a venue that had the main service hall for their whole hotel, and that was directly behind the wall at the back of the plenary. So the team was in there on break cracking jokes. One of them was shoveling ice. Now, for each and every one, if you've ever shoveled ice from an ice machine into a stainless steel ice bucket, it's very loud. It's very loud, incredibly loud. And that's very, very distracting. To the point where I ducked out the back, I'm like, guys, please, like, Stan Grant was on stage at that time. Literally, Stan Grant was on stage in a very deep and meaningful moment, a passionate presentation. In the background, someone shoveling ice. not a good look, and back to your point, puts downward pressure on the experience and makes it hard to keep them engaged.
Absolutely. And I think, too, as you're saying, 6 to 12 months of planning, thousands of dollars for just something so small to really break it there. So absolutely. And I think the next one is I'm really interested too. The senior leader speaking on stage, it's a bit of a faux pas, but I think it's a necessary thing and sometimes a great thing. But interested to hear your thoughts of how that can make or break.
Yeah, absolutely. The magic here is having a great MC that can interview them. And clearly I'm biased when it comes to that perspective, but the value I can add to events is being able to jump on stage with a sponsor or a senior leader, ask them a dozen questions, help them get their key message out, and bring the audience, to the example you used before, bring the audience on a journey, because I'm on stage controlling timing and controlling audience energy. So if you've ever got doubt that a sponsor is going to put the audience to sleep, leverage your MC and pivot it to a fireside chat. It completely changes the dynamic of the conversation, because all of a sudden the sponsor isn't selling to the audience, they're answering Luke's questions because we're in conversation. And that change in context completely changes the energy. And that goes for senior leaders who love their time on the microphone but aren't engaging. And as event professionals, that's our problem. As me as the MC, I then need to rescue that audience. And as you, as the producer, you then need to sell that next year after a lackluster performance by a key sponsor or a key stakeholder. So that's really important. It's about having the courage to say, we can make you look better on stage. This is the plan. Bring your MC in, pivot it to a fireside, and you'll get much more engagement. That's probably the key takeaway on that one. It's short, it's sweet, but it's very impactful.
Awesome. Love that. And have you ever been met with, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, if you have a major sponsor and they sort of say, well, I paid for all this, I get to be on stage, I get to say whatever I want. How do you navigate that conversation if you say like, hey, what could be the sell to this? Say, if we pivot to a fireside, everybody wins? It's
a great question, Alex. I actually lead with that. You've paid to be here. It's my job to make sure, as your PCO, you could say the same thing. You've invested time, effort, energy, and importantly, money to be here. It is our collective roles to make sure you get maximum value, maximum return on your investment. And we firmly believe the best way to do it is this. Help us help you, because this will work better. From experience in the past, leverage your past experience. This is the magic. I want to talk quickly about outside the plenary, because I know we're racing through here and we don't want to go too long because time is precious. Things you can do outside the plenary. Think about the distance to travel to and from breaks. Is there lifts? Is there stairs? Because that's going to impact your ability to move 1,000 people, even 100 people. What's the food layout like? Now, I did an event at Melbourne recently, and the food was on long 10-meter tables pressed up against a wall. Roll it out, serve the customers on both sides, serve them twice as fast. Think about that. And then how are you going to get them back in? How many doors have you got? And do you have a bell or an announcement? So that's what happens outside the plenary. That was our fourth key factor.
No, this is good. This is great. I was going to say to you, you mentioned that, and then also the timing behind that. So I think, pulling that out from the wall, serving twice as fast, and then people saying, a quick 15-minute break, and then you realize that getting them out of the room takes 5 minutes, and then, or at least, and then you've got getting the food in the cup, and then you sort of line for a coffee, bathroom break, and having enough, we don't have all the time in the world, but having enough there that people can go out and not feel stressed because you're rushing back in, and as you said, that breaks the experience as well. They don't feel like they're enjoying it. They feel like they're sort of being prodded and pushed in the sort of right direction as well.
Yeah, or worst case, they don't come back in. They skip a whole plenary session because they thought they were going to get half an hour to catch up. They only got 5 minutes by the time you got them out and got them back. They come in 20 minutes, half an hour later, and you've got a key sponsor speaking on stage to a half-empty room because scheduling didn't allow your audience to connect, to refresh, and collaborate outside. So that's a massive one. That's a massive one.
Awesome. I think that's great too. And I think also from your first point as well, taking the time to go outside and even watching the room, and if half the room's still getting their food, as the planner or the MC, go and say, okay, we need a little bit more time, but push it now, it's going to end badly for everyone. So
100%. It's, when we're in events, right, me on stage, my producer in the box, the AV team, we're kind of at that 6 foot level. We're at the coalface. But from time to time, you need to step out and jump up to the 30,000 foot level and look down on your event as if you're standing on the roof, looking down at the whole experience. To your point, it's a break time. Everyone's still eating. There's still half your delegates lined up at the food. That is not the time to ring the bell. You're going to need to make a decision and probably push it, because that's going to have a significant negative impact on your customer experience and level of engagement. If the bell rings, I mean, picture this, you're at a conference, it's taking you 5 minutes to get out, it's slightly behind schedule, and that happens sometimes. You've lined up for food for 10 minutes, you're just at the front of the line, and the bell goes to come back in. You haven't been to the washroom, you haven't done those 2 important emails you had to do, you wanted to network and connect with 3 people, and now all of a sudden you're being called back in. How would you feel as a delegate attending? And how likely would you be to go back to that event or choose another event because you had the luxury of choice? And I think this dovetails really nicely into the 5th point, which is use professionals. Now, again, as a full-time professional conference and event MC with over 600 events, I am certainly biased in leaning towards using professionals, but I've seen it go wrong so many times. It's your full-time professional MC that's going to be able to pivot at the last minute to have a fireside chat with sponsors. It's your full-time MC, and I was on stage in Melbourne at an event last year. Our opening keynote was an hour. This is why that communication is so important. I had a communication with my PCO. That keynote speaker told the PCO they're only going to speak for 20 minutes. The PCO didn't tell me. So I'm on stage in the front row. I'm in the front row. I hear my speaker say after 20 minutes, and my final slide is, and I was like, wow, it better not be, or it better be a good slide. So I jump into Slido, start packing it with questions, which I generally do anyway. I took the stage, and this time is burnt into my retinas, 36 minutes and 48 seconds to go in the session, because I got on stage and looked at it, and I thought, right, Luke, it's time to earn your money. So we sat down, we had an engaging, intriguing, thought-provoking fireside chat for 36 minutes and 48 seconds with about a minute and a half preparation, 2 minutes preparation, 21 minutes to 36 minutes, about 3 minutes. So I had 3 minutes to come up with 36 minutes of content. But that's where the experience of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events come in. So that's your MC, your AV team. They're going to be the ones that can hear a speaker, a headset crackling. Again, another event story, was at an event in Adelaide last year. I could hear the speaker, our keynote speaker's headset was cutting in and out, whether it was the micro dot adapter, whether it was the way it had been attached to her dress, it was a female. And I said to the AV team, I said, if this gets worse, I can jump on stage and pause, which I've done before, and I need you to jump on stage and fix the headset. And the AV person was like, what am I supposed to do? Now, as experienced as I am and as an MC, my expertise is not AV. So that's why using professionals, and I've had other cases where I've jumped on stage, they're up there in a flash, they're adjusting it, they're not panicking because they've done it before. Professional photographers, we invest so much time, effort, and energy in our event to capture that, to videographer it, gives you a ton of content. And when you've got a professional MC on stage asking thought-provoking questions, recapping, drawing out those key insights, you've got hours of content to market your future events and to give to your existing delegates as key takeaways and value adds. And so I cannot understate the importance of using professionals, because they will add 10, 20, 30 times the value to your event than the investment to have them there. I mean, so that's the 5, cohesion, the 1%ers, sponsors and speakers on stage, what happens outside the plenary, and of course, using professionals. Let me pass back to you. I'm sure you've got some questions. I know we're close to being on time, but I'd love to recap and take questions you've got.
No, it's all good. I'm gonna eat my dog food now and do what I've just said before and everything you've just said. So, no, I think it's great. I think looking at the energy of the room, and sometimes it's a very intrinsic notion of like how we look at the energy of the room. So I think some of the points you've said there around like noticing the lead and lag indicators is probably one of the biggest takeaways. I think using professionals too, which that last point also ties into point 1 as well, because it's the ability to pivot on the spot, because when things do go wrong, having someone either AV or catering or hosting or whatever that looks like that needs to fill a 15-minute gap or needs to change something really quickly, and even adding those in that initial risk analysis as well too. You know, if an AV goes wrong, what do we do? Do we have someone just yelling loudly, or do we have a handheld microphone, or what does that actually look like? And I think especially with the event experience, it's something it's hard to say, but I think an experience isn't just one or two things, and not just having one great speaker and you call it a day. It's like hundreds and hundreds of little things that sort of cascade together. So I think those 5 points are really great. I think I was going to say probably one of my last questions would be those 5 things is really great tangible points that the teams can take away. What would be the one thing, I guess, someone's got an event in 6 months' time, and they said, like, all right, to make sure I'm on the front foot, really focus on the energy of the experience. What's sort of your advice to them? What's the one takeaway from this session you sort of want to tell them?
It would have to be using professionals, because the more professionals you've got in your team, the more expertise you can leverage, and then the combined expertise, the combined experience that those people all bring just amplifies your ability to do your job really, really well, because the professionals are going to know that. In lieu of those, you need to focus on everything yourself, and that's just not possible. So if you build a great team, invest the time, effort, and energy, and of course money to bring them on board, it will pay you back so many times over. Definitely using professionals is the most important.
Perfect. I've got a whole heap of notes. That was really great. Thank you so much for that, Luke. And for anyone listening who wants to find out more, or maybe follow you or get more involved in some of the stuff you're doing, how can everyone find you out there?
Absolutely. lukehannan.com.au, and I'm sure we'll throw the website in the show note captions. Is my website. My show reels are on there, my contact details. Send me an email or pick up the phone. Let's have a chat. The magic, I'd love to jump on a Zoom call to unpack what you're looking to achieve from your event. What does success look like? How you want the audience to think, feel? What do you want them to do afterwards? Let's unpack all of that and work out if we're a great fit for each other and how we can make your event extraordinary. On socials, primarily LinkedIn, Luke Hannan MBA is where I'm at there. Let's keep in touch, and we can share the goodness of great events and how to make events amazing. But the website's probably the best starting point. Let's jump on a call and unpack your event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luke. I'll include the website and the LinkedIn profile there. People can follow you and have a chat. And thanks so much for coming on board. I really appreciate it.
Alex, an absolute pleasure. Thank you all. Be amazing, and let's make events great.